It is my pleasure to introduce two role models of mine who serve on our U.S. House of Congress. First, I want to introduce our DNC Vice Chair, Congresswoman Grace Meng, the first Asian American elected from New York State to join the House. I also want to introduce my California colleague who won his seat in 2016, Congressman Ro Khanna. Thank you both for being here today. Wanted to give you both an opportunity to just say a few words, but I'm hoping that in your introductory remarks, you can talk a little bit about what you feel the Asian Pacific Islander community needs to do in this year's election in 2020, and also the work that you have done over the last couple of years in shoring up our community's vote and making sure that we turn out. I'm going to start with Congresswoman Grace Meng out from New York.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to everyone for making tonight's event happen. I'm so excited to be here with all of the celebrities and superstars in our community, making sure that we are getting out our community's vote for November 3rd. You know, I want to thank this group because what you've done in 2018 and what you're doing in 2020 is really the priority is really to make sure that our community's voices are being heard, and especially in light of November 3rd's election, that they're being heard in the battleground states. You all know the numbers, but the AAPI, the number of eligible AAPI voters in almost every single battleground state outnumbers the number that Democrats lost by in 2016. And so our community can be the margin of victory and help elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, our first Asian American and Black woman vice president. I'll just tell you that, you know, growing up in New York as a daughter of immigrants, I never thought that I would really get involved in party politics. I never thought that I would, you know, be a part of the DNC or anything like that. But I realized after the 2016 election how much better of a job our party needed to do and how much more effective we could be collectively to reaching out to our community. I traveled the country for the last few years, and I've heard from so many folks who felt like they needed their voices heard, and not just every 4th October before election year, before the presidential election. So I've spent a lot of my past few years traveling to different states around the country, making sure that we are fighting for every single seat, and not just the White House, not just federal seats, but making sure that our state parties have the tools that they need, and also have the tools that they need to support AAPI candidates and to get out the vote. I also am chair of Aspire PAC, which is the political arm of the Congressional API Caucus. And basically what we've done is some of our members have adopted certain battleground states. And so very much in collaboration almost with what you guys are doing, trying to make sure that we're reaching out to the various communities, building these relationships, expanding our coalitions. And so I'm so glad to see the work that Asian Americans Against Trump is doing. It is so crucial to helping us win in November. And I just want to give a shout out to my colleague and my buddy, Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, thank you so much for all that you do. I know Ro has been traveling the country and talking to various communities way before this November election as well. So we appreciate him.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Congressman Khanna, it's great to see you here. Congressman Khanna and I actually spent a lot of time campaigning previous to the general election for a different candidate. But now we're here in the general, and I'm hoping that you can address a little bit about why it's so important for all of us to come out, no matter who we supported in the primary this upcoming November, and in particular, what you think the AAPI community needs to do to be seen, particularly those of us who represent progressive activists and leaders.
Well, Jane, thank you for your incredible leadership and vision and help in putting this together. And I really want to salute Grace Meng. She doesn't brag about herself, and she's understated, but she has really done a phenomenal job at the DNC with her leadership in pulling our party together. Grace would reach out to me during the primary many times to make sure that progressives had a seat at the table, to make sure that our voices were being heard. And I so admire her and admire you, Jane. I think it is absolutely a historic opportunity. First, I mean, think about it. As a son of immigrants, someone whose parents came from India in the 1960s, the idea that we may have an Asian American, an African American woman as vice president of the United States is pretty mind blowing. I mean, sometimes we take that for granted, but if you think about it, it has never happened in this country that we've had either a woman vice president or a person of color as vice president. I mean, that is an extraordinary barrier that will be broken. And for anyone who has kids, for anyone who believes that we need a multiracial, multicultural future for America, we have to get out. I mean, that's really what's at stake. I mean, it's the issues, and we can talk about a number of the critical progressive issues, but what's really at stake is whether this country is going to transition, whether we're going to turn the corner and transition to the way that President Obama was highlighting, which is a nation where it doesn't matter what your nationality is, it doesn't matter what your gender is, it doesn't matter what your race is, it doesn't matter, as he put it, if you have a funny sounding name. I love, by the way, the Emmy acceptance by the Ukrainian Indian American last night, where he talked about accepting on behalf of everyone with a funny name. Is that our vision of America, an inclusive vision of America? Or is it Donald Trump's vision of America, which by his own admission is let's go back to the America of the 50s and 60s. Well, that was not an America that believed in the potential of many of the people on this call. So we have to mobilize for our vision of the future of this country. And I also believe once we win, many of our priorities will be up front and center. Many of us are still fighting for Medicare for all in a pandemic, and we're going to push to extend Medicare once we win the White House. We're fighting for a $15 minimum wage, and we've already passed that in the House. We're fighting for climate change, bold Green New Deal, and we're going to push for the massive investment in renewables and jobs that we need. We are fighting for strong labor rights and union protection. So once we win, the Progressive Caucus and the House is going to be very, very active. But first we have to win. And anyone who thinks this election is not going to be very close, I think, is underestimating Donald Trump's power to do everything possible to win. I mean, he's frankly mobilizing the power of the United States government on behalf of his campaign. The only way we overcome that is by a massive turnout. So I'm really proud of 800 people you said joined this call. That's incredible. And you're all pillars in your community. You don't just speak for your own votes. You can mobilize your friends, your neighbors, teachers, community leaders. That's what it's going to take to win.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Congresswoman, it is really incredible to see you as the vice chair of the DNC, as an Asian American woman. I believe you're the first to serve in that leadership capacity. And, I'm curious from your perspective, is the Democratic Party finally paying attention to our AAPI communities? And if so, what does the party need to do to outreach to our communities even more strongly?
I'm not the first, but it's definitely, you're right. It's always been a struggle to make sure that our party understands that we are the fastest growing electorate in this country. And now, especially that we can make the margin of victory in many of our battleground states, it's important that we are making the investments. My first trip that I took as a vice chair was to Georgia for the John Ossoff congressional campaign. And even though we didn't win that election, because of the collaboration and because the DNC, for the very first time in that area, hired organizers that came from the local neighborhoods and communities who spoke the languages of the people in the communities, 8,000 voters were registered by Democrats in the whole progressive ecosystem. And so that we now also see, for example, committees like the TRCC investing in ads in Texas, you know, in Hindi and in Mandarin and Vietnamese in California. I mean, these types of investments have traditionally been unheard of, especially in places like Texas. And so it is really in line with what all of you are trying to do. And that's why I really wanted to be here with you and admire what you're doing, because you know, if you talk to the average API voter, many of them haven't even been contacted by either major political parties. So it's so important making that contact and having these conversations. You know, and the Republicans, they might push legislation and issues that hurt our communities, but oftentimes they are putting in that work and outreaching in various languages. So they're doing that superficial work. And if we don't show up, then we might lose ground.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. By the way, one of our stand-up comedians and celebrities, Ronnie Chang, says that you are a champ representing his city in New York.
You have to believe Ronnie.
Thanks, Ronnie. Really quickly, we have about a minute remaining. I want to go back to our Congressman Ro Khanna. We're both here in California, where we have seen the impact of climate change, the smoke and the fires. And also this weekend, you know, we have just learned of the passing of one of our great icons and legend, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so over the next 40 some days, Congressman Khanna, if you can share some inspiring words for our community about what we need to do and what we need to continue to do, what would you share with our community today?
Wow, that's well, no one can match the inspiration or eloquence of Justice Ginsburg. I mean, she was a giant and one of the great jurists, one of the great humanists of our time. And I've been reading some of her opinions to draw inspiration about American democracy at its best. I would just say to the Asian American community that I imagine many of you had a similar experience as I did. Our parents came to this country in search of a better life. We grew up with a modest backgrounds, went to public school, but had parents who said, go work hard, go do something, go make something of yourself. And we believed in the American dream. We believed in that hard work, that the pursuit of your goals is possible in America. And some of us have been fortunate, but all of us had that aspiration. I believe we have to fight for that vision of America for every American. We have to recognize that the very America that many of our parents or grandparents or great-grandparents came to, this pursuit that it didn't matter who you were, you could succeed, that is what is at risk. It's that fundamental ideal of America. And if we fight for that vision, because I think no one is more patriotic than the Asian American community, no one has a deeper sense of hope in some ways for this country than people who are children of immigrants. Then I think we will win this election.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman and Congressman, for being with us today. I'm so proud that you both represent us in the U.S. House of Congress. And by the way, thank you so much both for running. As Asian Americans, as children of immigrants, it is just inspiring to see your leadership and your fight for all of us.